if you would, just out of the gate, would you say that you have an artistic vision? And if so, what is that?
I've always been into art. I've always been painting, drawing. When I was a kid, I would draw superheroes. I got into a band when I was 13. Was doing music stuff, did makeup when I was like 12 to 17, and special effects and that kind of thing. So to me, it's always about kind of pursuing the next thing. I'm never really satisfied in one discipline of art, whether it's fine arts, whether it's music, whether it's film. So I like it all. So I guess I throw everything at me. I appreciate the whole sight and sound, movement, color, texture, the whole thing. And so if I can work on projects that incorporate a number of these things, I'm happy as all get out. I mean, like there's nothing better for me.
So would you say it's you have less of a particular vision and just more of a creative drive? You just have to do something?
It's more of a drive, just I have to keep doing things. And I get bored with projects quickly. I'll do a series of works. I'll do those for a few weeks, and then I decide I'm going to do something else over here. And film is the same way. So I don't know if I've got a vision except for keep doing everything, as often as you can. So my days are spent painting, and especially now with doing editing, things are kind of locked in. A lot of marketing. So I like the creative process to a dozen different kinds of mediums. So my vision would just be soak it all in and don't concentrate on just one thing. Don't be just the jack of that, single trade. I want to spread out and do a dozen different things at any given time.
Yeah. I wonder if we're similar in a certain way. Creatively, sometimes I will just know, and I'm trying to think of last time I experienced this, but I'll have kind of like an amorphous idea of something and then just go with it. So if in music, that might be, I'm just really liking this chord structure. Let's just play with it. And all of a sudden that becomes a song. Or what else? I make little memes to keep my sanity. And so sometimes I'll just say, well, I know I'm trying to say this thing, so let's just see what happens when I start messing around. That's pretty much what you do?
Pretty much, yeah. I will be hit with ideas from any given direction, any given time. So a lot of times I will just put it on a back burner if I'm busy with something else, but a lot of times it'll just take over my life. And it's like hearing a song and saying, I really love the song, and then listen to it 10 times in a row just because, and then you get tired of it, after a day. You're like, that was the best song in the world, but now I'm kind of sick of it, so I'm on to the next thing. That's kind of my creative process with most of these things. Is I just want to keep momentum going forward, but it keeps kind of splitting out in different directions.
So as a creative spirit, when you look back, I asked you about your vision, and you were recalling all these different creative projects over your life. When you look back, what was like the first thing that you kind of dove into creatively that had, like, you still remember? It was one of the first things that you really did. For instance, for me, I was like, one of the things I can remember is creating a radio show on my little tape recorder with a friend when I was like 8 years old. I mean, do you have something like that?
I did. I was big into superheroes when I was a little kid. So in elementary school, I realized that I could draw pictures and sell them to classmates. And I would take this is stupid in hindsight, but I would take comic books, tear the covers off, glue them to cardboard, and I'd cut it out into jigsaw pieces and sell it as an original jigsaw puzzle.
Awesome.
And I'd make a buck or something, and I would make medallions people could wear out of cardboard and put Thor or the Hulk or something on them. So I was into commerce at a very young age. I realized people wanted to have these things. So yeah, probably drawing and superheroes and stuff was my first love, and that's what really kind of got the creative side going.
That's really unique too. Were you an only child?
No, I'm the youngest of three.
Wow. See, I attribute my creativity to being an only child until I was 10, because I had to keep myself occupied. And so my mom would say, what are you making there? And I was making some card game that I just kind of came up with, not out of cards, but out of pieces of paper and a pen and just making stuff. And then a few weeks later or a month later, my mom would go, Isaac, look at the TV. And there was a commercial for something that I had basically made on my own.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, but you're not attributing your creativity to that at all, because you had to what, fight for attention?
No, not so much. But we're 2 years apart. My brother is 4 years older. My sister's 2 years older. They were doing their own thing. They had their own friends circuit. When I was doing my, we all grew up on Saturday morning cartoons and TV and that. I just kind of gravitated towards this other kind of hero side of things, and then that turned into monsters, Universal, Frankenstein's, things like that. Watching late night TV. So we shared similar interests about some things, but I definitely dove in much deeper in these areas. My brother's a musician, actually kind of full time right now because he's retired, but he plays in an Alice in Chains cover band.
Oh, nice.
Well, maybe not so much now, but that's how he makes his money, which is fun. But yeah, I kind of got more into the horror side of things, little kid horror, not like hardcore stuff. But and that opened up my whole world to this whole other thing, and I started getting into that, and then special effects and makeup, and that was well before the band stuff kicked in. So I liked the behind the scenes, I like the Hollywood stuff, the Disney World kind of behind the scenes, underground. How do they make these things light up, and how do they make things move? And so that became a fascination when I was still, very early teens, and it went from there.
So you were just curious.
I was very curious how they did a lot of this stuff, and I loved. There's something magical about it. I mean, it's that whole, again, it's that behind the scenes Hollywood stuff. People will watch those making of, documentaries of, how they did this, how they did Avatar, how they did, Titanic. People still have a fascination with how they put things together. But for me, I soaked it in. I bought all the magazines. I would buy books on how they did forced perspective and how they did mirror gags and matte paintings and all this stuff. And I just kept bringing it in and more and more and more, and it became part of my life. And so I was kind of a little bit removed when I was younger from, I had friends. I had the normal kind of kid, lifestyle growing up, but, I would put on weird music and I'd paint my walls and I would, kind of get in my own head. And they encouraged that. They really didn't care, my parents. So they were supportive. And when I would go put makeup on and scrub my face and come down, and I'd show them and they, oh, that's pretty cool. Look at you. You're a zombie or a werewolf or whatever. And I'd run back upstairs and, think of something else. But I had a whole kit of makeup that I spent all my allowance money on, all my selling of anything that I could. I'd buy all these other tools and props and things like that. So they didn't discourage me, so I just kept going with it. My friends, we did a few short films, 8mm stuff. Someone would have an old, camera their dad would have, and we'd go out and shoot things. I have no idea where that stuff is anymore. But yeah, the imagination is the creation of something from nothing. That's really been my drive since I was that age.
And your affinity for, I don't know, would you describe it as horror? What would you call that? But you're into a lot of oddity, dark, bizarre things.
I do. What, are you looking at this thing behind me?
Well, I've been in your house.
Yeah, I've been in my house. I have an appreciation of odd things for sure. I think there's a neat kind of subsect to humanity that kind of gets either whitewashed or kind of brushed off to the side. It's kind of it's a very mild kind of gothic-y sense that I love the Coney Island feel. It's the same thing. Coney Island's amusement parks, haunted houses, it's that bigger fascination with just, that's kind of a little on the darker side, and they just kind of blended together for me. So it's not really a love of horror per se, because there's a lot of horror movies I won't watch. There's a lot of gratuitous kind of things I'm just not into. In real life stuff, I can't watch anybody bleed about anything in real life. I have to sit down. But I love it if I know it's a gag, somebody's neck is burst open, their head's caught. I think that's great because I know it's an effect. But real life stuff, I can't. Yeah, no. I'm much too sensitive for that.
So thinking about some of the people who have this affinity that enjoy certain types of horror, that enjoy haunted houses or just like the bizarre stuff. A lot of the friends that I've had in my life that were into those genres were very tatted and pierced people. And what I'm basically trying to find if there's a common denominator it sounds like you had a pretty decent childhood, a decent family. So was yours more of life is too cookie cutter clean, I need to think outside of this box somehow, or does it just happen to be what your interests were?
I think I picked up on it on my own. I still have no tattoos. I'm not a Satanist. I'm not anything like a lot of people lay claim to kind of jumping into a lifestyle of that. That's not necessarily me. I love surrounding myself with oddities and horrific things and pickled punks and jars and all that. Two-headed parakeet I've got at the studio. So things like that are really fascinating to me, but it doesn't come from a dark place of brooding, and I didn't grow up as a gothic kind of a kid. I just grew up very artsy, not a sports person, more, leaning towards music and drawing and painting and things like that. So very kind of artsy, but keeping the darker side, over here, so it's not too far away. But that wasn't my whole upbringing either.
Okay. And speaking of the too gory stuff that's too gory for you, but you said that was really when it looked like it was real or something. So would you say that you're a fan of the Wes Cravens and who's the other guy I'm thinking of that did like Hellraiser and whatnot?
Oh, Clive Barker.
Clive Barker. Would you say that you're a fan of those people for their artistry or no?
I am a fan of things. Okay, so when the original Friday the 13th came out, Sean Cunningham directed that one, and Tom Savini, like makeup guy, he did the effects for that, which he's kind of a name now. I saw that when I was a teenager. I think it came out in 1980, so I was 14 when I saw that. But I saw it in the theater, and that had a big impact on me because I knew, even at that age, what the effects were going to be, like cutting a neck. So to me, kind of the Wes Cravens, the even stuff that Rob Zombie's doing now with his films, there's still a fascination. I think we all kind of grew up with the same mindset of some of the stuff is really cool. It doesn't have to get too dark. A lot of the Clive Barker stuff, Hellraiser and Nightbreed and things like that have, they're kind of fun, but they're not nearly as much fun as Freddy Krueger might be. Okay. I mean, fun in a way that it's supposed to be a little more broad and over the top. Texas Chainsaw is another thing that I'm not going to watch that again and again. I saw it. It was fine, but it was a little too, I don't like mean-spirited things. I like things to be a little more fun and a little more brightly lit so you can see what's happening. I don't like things jumping off the shelf out of a closet, when you open a door. I don't like jump scares like that. I love haunted houses, but I think in film it's too easy to startle people with something too shocking. It's not necessary. I mean, I think there's something fun about the more, gothic kind of intensity you can build up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me wonder if I'm accurate in thinking you probably liked the original TV miniseries of It rather than the remake because it was much more boo, like now you're scared, right?
I did very much like it in Salem's Lot when that was on, that came on TV. So there were things that I saw, I was like, this is fun. This is fun. I did love the It remake. The Chapter 2 wasn't quite as good, but the original, like the one that came out a few years ago, I thought was brilliant, honestly. I thought they really turned that on its head and made it. It's like the Evil Dead remake they had a few years back. Super gory, way over the top, but it almost crossed the line of being too crazy, but it was still just, this is brilliant. I mean, like the direction is good, the lighting is good, the acting is good, but the effects are really outstanding. I mean, things they didn't have back, a number of years ago. So there's something about the newer stuff that is good, but I'm still like old school with what I appreciate more in films.
Now, understanding that this kind of stuff has been staying with you all your life pretty much. So you said that you were born and raised in New Jersey. Is that right?
I was born in New Jersey. We moved when I was 3. I grew up in Maryland. Right between, like literally smack dab between Baltimore's here, DC's here, Laurel, the town I grew up in, was right in between them. So I got to know both cities fairly well.
So the acronym DMV was a part of your life for a long time?
Yes.
Okay. So talk about, if you would, you started in New Jersey, you probably have zero memory of that. Then okay. You have a memory of that. You go to the DMV, which is eventually where you met Jessica before you came up to Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Met her, I was living in Frederick, Maryland at the time. And I just finished up work at a TV station. I was producing this 5-night-a-week live entertainment music show. It was crazy. It was a lot of fun, but that show had ended. Left the TV station, which was based in Northern Virginia, moved to Frederick, and then met her there while I was doing other small things, doing AOL series work and my own productions and that kind of thing. So yeah, I met her about close to a year before moving up to Pennsylvania.
So had you met her before you were ever involved? Because I know you were married before, you have 2 kids. So yeah, so if you could just talk about how your life transpired, including starting a family, ending a marriage, meeting the love of or one of the loves of your life, rather. And I don't want to say that improperly, but and then where music and some of your other art forms started to really creep into your life.
Well, I'll go with the relationship stuff first. So yeah, Emily and Jordan are my son and my daughter. Wonderful kids. They're both, Emily's in Philadelphia and Jordan's near Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. He's in production. She does web design and a number of other things, both very talented kids. Their mom and I had split up when they were very young. They were 3 and 5 when we had separated. She is remarried. Allison's a wonderful woman. She's got a great guy in her life, and her family is awesome. So we still talk. We still get along very well. And it was after that, I'd actually remarried a second time for a brief period of time. It was wonderful, but it was very short. It was only 2 years. That kind of didn't work out so well. And we learned a lot since then. I still keep in touch with her. She's a wonderful woman as well. She's down in Texas. But yeah, kind of batted around a few different ways. And then when I had met Jessica was, again, post-TV station work, doing my own thing in Frederick. And she was tied in with the stand-up comedy side in the DC area. And I was tied in with the stand-up DC comedy side, not as a stand-up comic, but as somebody who would produce TV shows that they would be on. I would get them to act in films, and because usually stand-up comics they got good timing, they got good faces, they're good physical people. So I tend to gravitate towards comics when actors are scarce or when I'm looking for a particular kind of a thing. So I was working on a short with a comedian friend of mine, and I needed a driver. Hopefully the story is not going to be too long or convoluted. So we putting together this 10-minute thing. Main actor, so we need to get a driver, female driver, to act in a scene in the short film, little comedy thing, bizarre comedy. He says, "I'm just the person." So he calls Jessica. She comes over. She does the driving in the film. Works out well. We hit it off famously. And then I lost touch with her for a little bit. Flash forward, we meet again at a backyard party that, again, mutual friends are having. Connect again. It just goes back and forth until eventually, yeah, I got the nerve to ask her out, and she finally said yes. And that was, that was almost a year before moving up here to Pennsylvania. And
was that primarily because you had found a job in Pennsylvania, or you want to be closer to family, or?
All my family is down in Maryland. My sister's in Northern Virginia. My brother's in Southern Maryland. My mom was in Maryland at the time. The reason I came up here was Bucknell. I answered an RFP for a video they needed to do for a big commencement, 10-minute big, it was a sizable project. And the girl who was working for them at the time had sent out proposals to many companies all around the area. So Maryland, PA, New York, I think she scattered it all around. And so I answered back. I said, okay, well, here's what we would do. Here's the budget. This is what we consider. and she looked at our reels, and she got a chance. Our reels. It looked at my reel. Got a big, group with me. So she checked out my stuff, and we chatted and got along. I went up, and so that job that I got for Bucknell led to many other jobs. Every other weekend, I was traveling from Frederick to Lewisburg to keep doing more and more bio pieces, faculty pieces, student pieces, that kind of. We got along. I mean, it was a good thing. And eventually she called after a few months of doing that, actually almost a year of doing that. And she said, what would you think about moving up here regularly? Because we need someone full time. So they didn't have anybody doing video at the time. So they created a position to do all the in-house marketing videos for the university. That was 2008 when I came up to do that, and been here ever since.
Wow.
And I don't work there anymore, if anybody's curious. So I ended that. That was almost 10 years there. And then now I'm doing my own full-time freelance work again.
No kidding. Wow. You're in my world, huh? Or I'm in your world, one of the two. We're in the same.
We're in the same world.
Yeah. It's nothing like it. But I'll keep this about you. It's an interesting experience though, isn't it? Being like your dream has to put food on the table. Yeah.
It is feast or famine. I mean, anybody in the arts can attest to that. I don't know anybody in this line of work, whether it's in theater, whether it's in comedy, whether it's in film, painting, what have you, that's just flush all the time. They just have so much work and so much money, they don't even know what to do. But it's more like I love this thing that I'm doing. So even if I'm not making much this week, next week, hopefully I'll make a little bit more because I'm hungry. And, I'll compromise my craft a little bit to do this thing, commission for this thing over here. And then I'll go back to really what I love doing over here. So a lot of the work that I do, I've had some clients I really don't care for in the past, but they pay a bill. Because I know that making money over here, then I can either do a free job over here for somebody that I really care about, or a greatly reduced rate because I've got money from this group over here, this healthcare group. I could take them or leave them, but they gave me a lot of money, so I'm going to move that over to here for things I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I don't know that the art versus commerce game ends for anybody, at least in our world right now. Like people that are huge Hollywood stars. That some of them are some of the best actors of our time, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, you name it. They do the couple big Hollywood movies throughout the year because they pay a tremendous amount of money, and then they do like 3 or 4 indie films where they can really do what they love, and that's all of us on skills, I think, right?
Yeah. And I on the other side of the camera from where you generally are, or for the most part are. I feel like I feel very fortunate that people that have the talents that you have only help me. And if you say, hey, I'm willing to do scale, I'm willing to work outside of a union, or I'm willing to do this, we can figure something out because they love the craft. That only helps me because I'm like, hey, I got $500. Can I get you for 2 days?
Right.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. Well, he's not taking calls now anyway, but somebody of his caliber. I agree, he's a brilliant actor. But you just can't make Hollywood calls with central Pennsylvania money, and I've never wanted to go West Coast. I've never, New York is not really my scene. Production wise, it's just, it's thick with them.
I have wondered that about you, like why you never came out here, but
to me, there's always going to be somebody that's got more money invested into gear, whether it's post-production gear or camera. People were moving into 4K and I was still doing just regular 1080 shooting, but I'd had to be more creative. They were getting these $5,000 lenses and I was buying like old 1970s film camera lenses that I thought looked really good, which they did, but it's just a different kind of a mind thing. I could not keep up with the momentum that was being built. And when you talk about places like New York, even DC, where I came from, people had said, I'm investing $100,000 in my gear because I'm going to get really big contracts in. And they would get contracts, but you need that $100,000 to put into stuff to be able to get those contracts.
Right.
And to me, it's more, I'd rather light something with a cell phone, shining into a tin can, and keep it interesting, keep it creative, than to be able to have everything at your disposal. you should really work with what you have. The first movie you mentioned, The Feed, that we did back in 2010, the only reason why we picked that theater as a location was because it was a free location, because Jessica worked. If she worked in a shoe store, it'd be set in a shoe store. You know, I didn't write the movie based around, you know, an idea that I had necessarily from before. It was around what you have, what's convenient for you.
And that really,
you know, that you were in.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I cut you out.
Oh, no, you're fine. The same thing with The Lost Within, the second feature that I did that you were in. I wrote that around what's around here. What's central Pennsylvania? You know, let's go to the Daily Item because it's right down the street. Let's go to, you know, quote unquote Amishy country that's 40 minutes away in Lock Haven because it's all close. I'm not going to set it in Hawaii or in New York. Or something that's got iconic images that you have to go someplace to get. No, it's going to be in farmland and maybe a downtown city-ish thing. That could be Sunbury, it could be Williamsport. I think you write, it's like writing to your strengths. You know, you've got to know, as a writer, you have to know what you're able to churn out. You can push yourself, but you know kind of what you're able to do. Film is the same side. You know, work with people that you can get, the actors we can get. I've been very blessed to have great actors that I've worked with. You too, and I just love the fact that you it's kind of forces you, it kind of paints you into a corner that you've got to get creative with. How do you get this on screen? How do you make this the best that you can possibly do? And then when that's done, you go on to something else.
Yeah, and it really reinforces. There's been a couple people. One of them was just trying to make sure I got the quote correctly by looking it up. But kind of wisdom that's been passed down through different adages that all say the same thing. You know, my favorite story I've ever been told is the show Lost. And there's one of the writers wrote in there, struggle is nature's way of strengthening. But the one that I was looking up was a Denzel Washington quote. He's one of my favorite people, just so much wisdom. And he says in one of his big speeches was, ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship. And it kind of, I think, speaks to what you were saying, where if you don't have the budget and everything at your disposal, that forces creativity now. So now you've got to become better. So
that's what the Roger Corman way of doing things, the Lloyd Kaufman, you know, George Romero, the people that like, how do we get this thing to be accomplished? Do what you know, what do you have? What's available? You have ketchup? There's some blood. You got some ketchup on something. And yeah, you grab with anything that you have around you and incorporate that. Same thing with art and same thing with music. You know, you find the best people you can play music with that want to play with you, and you do music stuff.
Is that how The Dark Country came about?
The Dark Country started, that was, okay, so the guitar player, Jeff Halkowitz, singer, Brianna Healy-Durr, were in a band with Pete Groff, the drummer. They were Snakes Are Strong, and the name of the band, Snakes Are Strong. They played in Lewisburg. Kind of a power punk, just 3 people, 2 guitars, drums. And I got to go and hang out with them, and I would help them with lighting at their show. And I gave them an idea of like get a video projector and find an old movie, you know, something colorful, bloody, gory kind of thing, and project that on. There's your lighting right there. You don't need big lights, you know, just project a movie on yourselves, and there's your lighting. People can actually watch something else that's going on. Soften the focus a little bit so they're not too distracted. So hang out with them, and then they started doing stuff with Derek Scott, the other singer, and Maria Balcells, who's with Pete, the drummer. And then we got to, let's just go ahead and get together. And that was, 5 years ago, something like that, 5 or 6 years ago. And we played a total of 4 gigs. We put out the CD, which is really the whole thing. We just wanted to do like an album, like a concept album. Let's make this. No covers, you know, we didn't want to just do gig after gig. So yeah, we just made very theatrical shows at a few places, and played in I've got an outbuilding over here at the house, kind of a big shed, but we would jam in there, you know, once a week. Never do anything else but just play the same songs over and over again. And then made a record, and then singer moved over here, and you know, so the band kind of split up. And that's the story of The Dark Country.
So we're down to about 5 minutes of recording time left, I believe.
Okay.
I get 40 minutes with this. So, so I wanted to ask you, there's two things. One is a question from another Collective Perspective member, Celine, who's the professional drummer. She's a parent, and when having her daughter Sky, took her away from the ability to do what she loved to do as much. So she's always curious about other artists who are also parents, and how do they keep their art alive when being a freelancer is so difficult anyway, when you've got another human to take care of. And the other thing I'd like you to answer, if you could, because we only have roughly 5 minutes left, is where your creativity has gone during this quarantine. So as you choose to answer.
Okay. So with the kids, when my kids were growing up, with their mom and I being split up, I would see them on occasion, weekends and the normal kind of, co-dad stuff. But both of them loved the same stuff that I was into. We loved the same music, the same movies. Both of them had picked up bass guitar at one point. Jordan still plays guitar. So they started bringing in their own thoughts and resources. But I was like, hey, fun dad, because he likes horror movies. He likes makeup. He's, crazy guy over here. So we got along famously, and that was not really, so my kids getting into the same types of things was a huge benefit. Like I would never exclude them from my thought process. So even treatments I would write, or ideas, music videos and stuff, I would always share ideas with them, and they loved hearing that. I think as a parent, you really have to be open. I don't know how old the child is you're referring to.
Sky's only like 4 right now. So. Okay.
But they soak in so much. I mean, like just to know that there's nothing taboo that, a parent is into creatively that should be, well, this is for me, and this is, go take your crayons and go in the other room. I was never a fan of that. To me, you have to kind of let them see your process. I would like to say that it helped shape them into being these remarkable kids that they are. Kids, they're adults now. But who knows? Their mom had a big hand in that too. She was very great with that. But as far as this, the second question was about the whole COVID thing.
Yeah. So in part, like if you could just say, we're at 4 minutes. Okay. So if you could just let me know, what were you into? What were your hands involved in this was my plan for March or for April. And then all of a sudden this happened. And now that you're stifled to some degree, yet propelled into creativity because there's nothing to do. So it's a mixed bag question, but like, what were you looking forward to before this happened? How has this helped your creativity, and what have you done to be creative during quarantine?
I understand. So there's a few projects that I had in the books. I had deposits for video projects that was supposed to be filmed end of the winter, beginning of the spring. Those have been put on hold. So that's kind of off down the road. Other music videos, obviously treatments that I'd had that were approved on hold because it involves large groups of people or interaction and this kind of thing. So there's things kind of waiting in the wings. The Arts Underground, the collective that I run in downtown at, my company Creature Feature Design started in the Pajama Factory in Williamsport, where I got to see you and a lot of mutual friends that we'd had up there. But then moving to town and starting this collective, 7 or 8 people in one room sharing a big space of studios, that was put on hold the last 2 months. So that's been dark for the most part. We can't sell our art. We can't open the doors and invite the public in. We certainly can't have any classes. So we're all itching for that time to get back in there where it's like, I want to do a charcoal portrait class, or I want to do a sculpting class, or makeup or body painting or something else. So there's things that I want to do myself and the other artists want to do, but we're unfortunately on hold and having to create art in our own homes. So I'm painting here, I'm doing editing here. With the video side of things, even though those other things are over here kind of waiting until things loosen up, I'm getting calls from other people because things like this Zoom meetings. I've started working for Clark University, doing some editing for them, where they are doing a lot of meetings. They need to get it out to the community, to the students and faculty and parents. So I'm one of the people they brought in as a resource to be editing together things that go out, in this limited kind of fashion, in this screen here. So work is still coming in, and COVID-friendly music video ideas, and again, painting when I can, doing a lot of house stuff, like everybody. I think that we can still make it through this. We just have, we're punting at this point, we're not driving into the end zone. We're having to we're still in the game, but we've got to kind of relax a little bit and not beat ourselves up, because there's only so much we can do. And it's a matter of kind of retooling the way that you think about the creative process with music. People are doing Skype and Zoom band sessions and choral work, and Frankenstein being at the National Theater, watch our stuff for free, and there's Benedict, and everybody can see. So I think there's a lot of things that are going on. They're trying to be more friendly with this whole online experience, and Netflix obviously stocked through the roof. There's a reason behind people staying creative, and I think that creative minds will never fold during this time. We shouldn't be folding. We have to be very particular in how do we retool this to stay as creative as we were back in December. Sure, things are on hold, but it can't be just how many times can I sweep the floor. There's other things that could be considered. There's things like this. There's other outlets, we'll get through this. I feel very confident we'll get through it, and it'll be a little bit different, but I think we're being forced into creativity. I mean, the whole world is. We're already ahead of the game. The rest, they're catching up with us.
Yeah, and fortunately, there's some creative spirits that, like we are, that have their hands in multiple of creativity and art. So, I can't really act right now in a way that's meaningful for me. But what I can do is settle back into, what, I love people, and I miss interviewing people and talking about important things. So here we are. And
Nice.
yeah, and for you, you're getting to freelance here and there because you can do so from your computer.
Right.
And I'm playing video games for the first time in like 10 years. So
Nice.
yeah. So one last thing, I think I'm down to like less than a minute now, but
Okay.
so you were potentially going to have people listening to this who are would-be filmmakers or or would-be artists in various forms. So what kind of words would you say to someone who maybe was starting to get interested in something like you're into already, but it got put on hold, so it couldn't even get started? What do you tell them to focus on looking forward to the quarantine being over?
Well, one of the benefits we have about this whole binging process we're going through, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or anything else, Amazon, there's a lot of good content that's out there. From a filmmaker standpoint, we can follow storylines much more intimately because our focus is on that for a whole day or 2 days or a long weekend, where we can see developments, we can see plot points, we can see things they worked on for a whole year condensed down to a weekend for us. So to me, there's something kind of magical about this time, because we can scrutinize so much more, and we were almost forced into doing this. So you can pick up on dialogue, you can look at lighting, what kind of lenses are they using? Wide lens, it's a 50 millimeter, 85. So there's different, what does their background look like? So there's things where we can actually teach ourselves at this point because we're looking at a screen, and it's plot points, it's developments, it's all this character stuff that they didn't really count on us being like this the whole time, watching a whole thing end to end. But as a filmmaker, this is the best time to be, this is schooling, this is wonderful actually, because it's all condensed, it's all pushed together, and we can't do anything else but just really focus on that. Art, same thing. There's still people doing wonderful works out there. You wish you could touch it. We're missing that kind of tactile sensation of being able to run our hands over sculpture or something. If you do that, I do that. But there's things that we're missing. But there's also people are creating things, beautiful, beautiful works. Carving a potato to like George Washington. Who did that before? There's 10 people doing that right now.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of heading that same direction. That's a train, if you can hear it. I've got the windows.
Yeah, and it's just about to stop, so this is perfect timing. So, Steve, thank you so much. This has been a treat for me. I'm sure it will be for the listeners. And you'll get to hear it sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve.
Take care.